Most years I grow sweet potatoes, and this year I decided, instead of digging through the soil to find all the sweet potatoes, I would just grow them in these fabric pots. Since I've never grown sweet potatoes in fabric pots or pots at all, I decided I would experiment in a couple of other ways as well. I'll explain more about this experiment in just a minute, but first I'm going to load these up in a garden cart and take them over to where we're going to do the work. Here in container number 1, I've just planted 1 sweet potato slip. In container number 2, I've planted 2 sweet potato slips. In container number 3, I've planted 3 sweet potato slips. I knew there were going to be other variables at play. 2 of the containers that I ordered are of a similar material, and the other is of a more felt-like material. In addition to those variables, there are different cultivars of sweet potatoes across these 3 containers. However, each of these 3 containers contains 1 of the same type of sweet potato. There's 1 of them in number 1, 1 in number 2, 1 in number 3. Number 2 has 1 slip of another cultivar of sweet potato. Number 3 has 2 slips of that additional cultivar. Everything got the same care, the same sunlight. They were spaced evenly at the same elevation. I trimmed none of the foliage. But at this point, I just need to harvest them. We're going to see visually and then by weight what the difference is in these different techniques. This is container number 1. As you can see, everything comes from this one spot. 1 bunch of sweet potatoes. So let's dump it out in here and see how I like it. Or I think I'm just going to pull the greens and toss the dirt into the container. So let's see. What I'm going to do with these, I'm going to put these in a pile for now, but I am going to come back and I'm going to take some cuttings. I'm just going to leave them in a jar of water over winter. I usually just keep one going, and then by the time we're approaching the need for sweet potato slips, it's normally big enough that I can take multiple cuttings off of that and fill whatever I need to fill. So we're going to toss these. Then we're going to dump it. You might see there's little trap doors on them. We'll see if we use it. We might not. I'm going to take them and set them to the side for now. I'll pull what I can by hand, and then I'll take them over so we can take a closer look at them. I don't think we'll count those. Okay, so that's container number 1. And here we have container 2. We're going to treat it exactly the same way. I just noticed, however, in container number 2, it looks like the vine made contact with the soil in another spot. I don't know where it started. This looks smaller. I'd bet it's that. So actually, this one, by chance, does have 3 clusters as well. But those weren't 3 slips. Number 2, let's move on. Now we have container 3. Same situation here. Grab the tops, pull the tops. Now, interestingly enough, it looks like we lost one of the plants in this. Let's lay them out. There are our results. As you can see, there's a clear winner here. We're going to weigh these and we'll see who actually won. And then we'll review what I could have done better. And I'll explain what I think might explain some of the results. Now that we've harvested the sweet potatoes, we can definitely draw some conclusions. The main difference amongst the 3 test pots of sweet potatoes was the fabric material. 2 were made of a similar type of material. The 3rd was made of that more felt-like material. I never expected the felt-like material would be a better producer. I actually suspected fully that it would be least productive, as it would be harder to maintain moisture in the soil. So it was definitely a surprise. The black containers were a more plasticky material, so I definitely thought they would aid in retention of moisture, in spite of the fact that they're darker and will draw more solar heat. Everything else amongst these containers was the same. They had the same blend of soil. They were placed in the same location. They all had equal watering, which was from rainfall, and then I would water them every couple of days or as needed when they started to look sad. They received equal fertilizer. Now, in terms of some of the surprises, the container that I expected to have 2 plants that actually had 3, I think I know what caused this. Usually when I grow sweet potatoes, they spill out of the containers that I grow in, which are raised beds, and they start getting crazy with the vining. I fully expected this to happen with these, and to try to get ahead of it, when the vines were starting to fall over the sides, I noticed they were causing the sides of the container to sort of fold where it would lay across. And to try to mitigate that collapsing of the side, as well as having unruly vines, I decided to sort of snake the vines around the inside of the container, also with the intent to sort of create a living mulch. What likely happened is one part of that vine made very good contact with the soil. It grew new roots from that point of contact and essentially became its own individual plant. In container number 3, where I anticipated having 3 plants because I did plant 3 slips, I think what happened there is just a matter of bad watering. I never saw that plant die off, but I have a feeling that once I stopped paying super close attention, that I lost one of those plants during a drier spell. When I purchased these containers, they were sold as grow bags for potatoes and sweet potatoes because they have the little trap door at the bottom where, in theory, you open the door, you harvest your tubers, and you're good to go. Well, I've grown sweet potatoes before, and I know that usually the bulk of them grow in the top portion of the soil. I realized pretty quickly that the trap doors were probably just a gimmick. I'm going to have to dump this container anyways. I'm going to gut the bottom and take the roots, so the top's going to die. It served no benefit having the little trapdoor, in my opinion, but if you guys know a reason that it's actually beneficial, I'd love to hear it. Now, the big question is, would I grow sweet potatoes in these types of containers again? I think I would, but I would do a couple of things different. The biggest challenge that I had was keeping these things watered, and in spite of that, one of the containers had over 5 pounds of sweet potatoes in it, and it took up virtually no space. That's a serious harvest for a relatively small amount of square footage. There was very little moisture retention compared to growing inside of a plastic container or in the ground directly. So in the future, the one thing I'll definitely be correcting is water retention. The first way to do that is with irrigation. I have my whole garden except for a couple of smaller beds and my containers set up currently with drip irrigation, and it makes a world of difference. So if I grow these again in these types of containers, I'll definitely be adding drip irrigation. The second thing I would do is something I like to do with all of my container plants, and that's mulch. In the summertime, some of these containers would need watering twice a day. Mulching will save a lot of time and a lot of headaches. In the future, I would definitely mulch these containers, add the drip irrigation, retain that moisture, because watering is my least favorite part of gardening. I hope you've enjoyed this video. I hope you've learned something from it. Maybe it's going to inspire you to grow sweet potatoes, which they're incredibly easy to grow in these containers, in the ground, or in raised beds. The payoff is huge, the work is light, and the potatoes are delicious.